Step into analysis, please.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we're talking about Season 2, Episode 5, Akane No Mai. This beautiful episode can be divided into three main storylines: Bernard, Dolores, and Maeve. Before we get started, I want to give a special thank you to the new subscribers that have surged in since my last video. This entire experience has been an amazing feeling, and if you want to support content like this, please do consider subscribing or even joining Patreon. But with that, let's overthink an HBO show about robots. Starting off, we come to Bernard. He and Carl are examining bodies being dragged into the Mesa from the flooded area of the map. They have about 50% of the hosts currently in the Mesa or in transport too, and they've started draining this massive area. Carl wants everything, of course the bodies, but also the hats, shoes, and personal effects, anything located in this drowned zone. He finishes his call with the assurance that two teams are now looking for Peter Abernathy, and Carl wants him delivered directly to him. This is really interesting, however, because his purpose is human extraction and retaking control of the map. Why would he want this thing that only Charlotte has requested? I believe this is because he doesn't trust Charlotte, and I've been working on a theory about this to try and understand why a secret corporation that has outposts and fully operational labs would need to employ Charlotte for this task in the first place. It's peculiar. They were able to sneak this entire company in here over the years. You can't use the same back door to get a single host brain out? I mean, she turns to Lee Sizemore for options. This doesn't exactly convey that she's being supported by this organization on this journey. So I believe she's trying to get this data out for the rival company, because 35 years of data on a secret project wouldn't need to escape the secret project location. It would be kept there, secure, and in use. I would propose that perhaps she doesn't even use the terminal to communicate with Delos, but a rival mainland company. I've always had issue with them waiting so long to take control of the situation. At a very basic level of understanding, it doesn't make sense. You have an army ready to deploy. Why wait 2 weeks while two unarmed people try to get a package you so preciously demand to be delivered before extraction starts? That's because it's not Delos. It's this rival company, and Delos might show up so late because it's the first time they're hearing about it. If you think about the communication breakdown local to the park, we don't really have a frame of reference if that's happening outside of the park. And the rival company is willing to wait because it isn't going to risk invading Chinese waters to get this person who failed her mission out of the park if she doesn't at least have the data first. Alright, snap out of it, Hax. Time slippage, sorry. We come back to Carl. He speaks with the technician and he's informed that 1/3 of the recovered hosts have blank minds, not wiped. The dialogue specifically means that they have nothing and never have, like they are virgin. So what could this mean? Well, my original thought, inspired by a Twitter post by Vanessa Cole, is that I believe that these were used by Dolores, something that we would learn more about going hand in hand about worthy hosts, maybe getting new bodies to escape and usher in the new era. However, on my rewatch, I noticed a striking similarity to the imagery of dozens of dead cows burning because of disease and hundreds of dead bodies now being piled up in this facility here. In my live stream with Justin Thomas, I discussed how Dolores knows where Delos is landing and the number of people they're sending, and they're heavily undermanned right now. So what better way to get the upper hand than booby-trap the area you know they'll visit? But at the time, I was more privy to perhaps Bernard was the trap, and I don't know, he goes full Terminator and starts ripping Carl to shreds. However, Carl is now importing hundreds of dead or broken or not worthy hosts to the Mesa, and there's only one way to keep the flies away.
Daddy burned them. The weak, the infected. Made a pyre that went on for days, and it stank, but flies hate smoke.
To wrap that all together, my final theory is perhaps so many blank hosts were printed having something to do with the explosive device in their neck, and once they're all stacked together, Dolores lights the fuse and takes out a huge portion of those hunting her. Well, I don't know if we can be that focused, but I do stand by the fact that this is probably a trap by Dolores, inspired by, the idea that they're so undermanned and the blue-tongued cow story. Carl states that 1/3 of the park's IP is now gone. Again, mind the wording on this. He states that all of the hosts' minds and storylines and how the hosts operate is only 1/3 of what they're protecting here. I think the second third is the research project, and the last third, I'm leaving it to you. Post your best understanding of what this could be in the comments below, and I'll pin what I think is the best post. Finally, the scene ends with Spooky Strand staring at Bernard and saying aloud that that's quite the story you gave them, and one hell of an ending. How did all of this come together to create this nightmare? And if we figure that out, we figure out how the story turns. If you again subscribe to the cats in the cradle theory, he is quite literally staring at Bernard trying to figure out the story, and using him to obtain information to fill in the blanks for a predictive ending. Sounds an awful lot like a simulator. To test storylines and predict the best outcome or experience? The next storyline we come to is Maeve. The scene opens to snowfall and Musashi and associates capturing the group. Maeve tries her verbal commands and quickly fails. Later we find out this is of course because he doesn't understand English. She is gagged and they're escorted back to town. Lee talks about Shogun World further, how this is Westworld on veteran difficulty with an artful gore mod installed. Lee reveals that they can all understand and speak other languages if programmed or unlocked in their code, but the importance is that Maeve already has these comms currently available. They arrive at town and it has many features we've seen from Sweetwater. The response from the community on this was pretty mixed because we learn many of the storylines are mirrored in both parks and buildings are similar, but listen guys, Sweetwater is the starting area for the Westworld game. It's to get adjusted and run tutorials before you try to survive with Confederados out in the wilderness. Just like every video game, it needs a starting area that has an inn and stores, fun things to do locally before you just jump right into the thick of things. Another thing we learn is Lee is master of narratives for not only Westworld, but for every park in the island. If you haven't watched the behind the scenes for this episode, no one can describe the scene better than the show creators, so I yield to them. Something really beautiful occurs with this duality though. The members of Maeve's band and Maeve herself able to see a third-party perspective of who they're programmed to be. In a way, see what Lee sees. I think this helps develop them, however. Hector is resentful to his counterpart. Maeve becomes nurturing and wants to help. The scene with Armistice was too short. So much went into creating this parallel world, you can't help but just be amazed. Moments like when Paint It Black starts playing, or you see the dragon tattoo, or when Maeve comes face to face with Akane and Sakura. Akane, of course, is Maeve in this story, and Sakura is Clementine. The mother-daughter bond that Maeve sees in these two reflects her own feelings for her daughter, or potentially Clementine. Akane stabs the man, becoming what we see as her first conscious choice off of her narrative. They plan to flee for Snow Lake, and under the cover of night, before they leave, they're attacked by assassins. What is really interesting, however, is before this, Maeve sees a flashback of Akane and Sakura, a motherly hue as she visualizes the backstory of what they just described. You can take this a few different ways. It could just be conceptual, mirroring the motherly drive they both have, but I wouldn't rule out her being able to connect with other hosts and see their memories. At face value, they do the flashback transition animation, and we're brought here from Maeve's perspective. It's really interesting why Maeve is now visualizing her story. The assassins arrive, and Maeve commands one of the attackers to kill the other, showing us she still has the ability to, given the right language. She is then attacked herself and subdues her own assailant by means of non-verbal command. This is actually much less complicated than I think the show creators made it look. Ford showed his ability to issue non-verbal commands in Season 1, and Angela also had that ability in Season 2 at the start of the park, when they were still looking for investors. She is gaining a better understanding of the backdoor commands left in the code by Arnold and Ford, and she's learning them well. I would also like to add that I believe the mesh network has something to do with this backdoor. The idea of it being a proximity communication would explain why we see this ripple effect, going from one host to the other as it expands. The Shogun army arrives in town, and Hector, Musashi, and Armistice hold them off while the others escape. On the road, we see Delos employees tied to trees with torture devices on their head. Maeve and Akane speak more intimately about their joint storyline and rescuing the people they love. Lee finds a phone or IP communicator radio gadget, and I only foresee bad things coming from this. The importance of this scene is better reinforcing Maeve and Akane's relationship for a reveal that's yet to occur. They arrive at the encampment, and they encounter a malfunctioning shogun. He states that he knew a witch would be coming and had the ears of his men burned shut. Ouch. Oh my goodness. Akane makes a deal to dance for the Shogun in exchange for Sakura. Later that night, while getting ready, they discuss the new world, the same line that Maeve was programmed to say. We see a cherry blossom carved into Sakura's back, and the meaning is literally her name. A Sakura is a cherry blossom. Maeve states that she too has a daughter that would love to meet Akane one day, and they discuss about being free. The camera focuses to Akane while the same inner voice sounding background noise plays, giving us the takeaway that Maeve is wanting to help these people, make them awake like they are. The performance begins, and the Shogun walks over to Sakura and murders her. She somehow remains poised in all of this and maneuvers through her dance to the Shogun. I actually can't show any of this scene. You go watch the behind the scenes. It's pretty gruesome. But as Maeve and Akane kneel for their beheading, Maeve whispers that she is a true mother. Now, this is hugely important because Akane is the adoptive mother of Sakura, the Clementine of the Shogun World. Then we have the brief scene in the Dolores storyline where Clementine reflects on her own replacement, and it's actually pretty sad. You feel a legitimate sorrow for Clementine here. So I think that Maeve's journey for her daughter might not go as planned, and Clementine might be the new target. But we don't know if Maeve knows that she's up and walking around right now. The other part of the true mother comment is that Maeve states this after she murders the man that killed her daughter. When Sakura was killed, Maeve has a flashback to the man who killed her daughter. So does this foreshadow William's death at the hand of Maeve to go full circle, becoming a true mother also? Maeve commands all the Shogun warriors to kill each other, and then this beautiful slow motion cinematic as Maeve approaches her friends and grabs a lightsaber, a katana, ready to defeat this incoming horde. The last storyline belongs to Dolores, coming back to Sweetwater with the player piano stopping its autonomous reel, symbolizing the scripted, automatically processed nature of everything coming to an end. We learn their reason for returning to Sweetwater was to get the train ready. Dolores has been out of the park, knows the way in and out assumingly, and from the audience perspective, the only way is by train running here through the Mesa. Well, I guess maybe by boat or helicopter as well, but the importance is the train connects to the Mesa. My original thought was that they're stripping it for speed because it needed to be fast as possible to escape. That's right, this is actually Back to the Future, and Dolores' DeLorean needs to hit 88 miles per hour to enter the door. The entirety of next season is just Marty McFly freaking out about needing to go back. But I'm sorry, what am I talking about? Okay, so my original thought was that they needed to escape via high-speed train, but then I remembered this idea of a trap. What if instead she fills the train built for speed connected to the Mesa with a liquid explosive we know and love that just happens to detonate at high impact? Put the sucker in full reverse, crashes into the Mesa, causing all the damage we see 2 weeks later, and smoke is still flooding out of the tunnel. We come back to Teddy and Dolores in the bar. Clementine watches as her replacement repeats the same line she was directed to say. Again, the heartbreaking inclusion of this scene may point to Maeve's path taking her to come get Clementine and try to help her. They ride for the hills and discuss the time they've spent together, watching the herd, enjoying what their life used to be. She states that she just wanted to see it one last time, and Teddy suggests that they just settle down and leave the fight. Dolores provides the analogy about sacrificing the few diseased cows to save the overall group. But what's even more interesting is that never happened. She was never a little girl, so she never witnessed anything but her story, and this is just another story she was programmed to remember. So I'm interested to find out if she realizes this at some point, and it's a turnaround for her character that maybe she isn't as woke as she thought. We then come back to Sweetwater, and the night is upon us. They show the train, a horse being stripped of its saddle, and a person carrying what looks like to be a body or just a heavy bag. Well, if they crash into this Mesa, then they'll probably need to not be on the train. So horseback alongside the train sounds like a pretty cool cinematic we might expect. But why would they be bringing these bodies? I suppose it's possible that they're filled with nitro like we saw in the earlier timeline. Makes you wonder if the trap I theorized at the Mesa is just all the hosts filled with nitro delivering this incendiary purge. But I suspect they probably would have figured that out after the first few hosts they analyzed. Angela returns, stating her father is at the Mesa, and they leave at first light. Dolores takes Teddy to the bedroom and has what I thought was a nice moment, assuring her that he was with her no matter what. But I was wrong. After Teddy's the romantic intercourse, Dolores hawks over him like a forkin' psychopath and gives him a good old breakup speech. She states her feelings for Teddy are true. The importance is that Dolores truthfully feels for Teddy. Her feelings are real, but because of who Teddy is as a character, she doesn't want him in the way, doing things like not obeying her orders or filling her head with ideas of serenity when she needs to be focusing on her mission. They trap him and hold him down while the tech uploads a modification to his character, overwrites the base level heuristics file, which heuristics by definition is any approach to problem solving, learning, or discovery that employs a practical method not guaranteed to be optimal or perfect, but sufficient for the immediate goals. So the idea is that now Teddy is more of a follower during this time and won't get in Dolores' way with something as pesky as making his own choices. But alas, we come to the end of the video, and while comparing this and last week's episode wouldn't even come close, it is by no means a bad episode. Tons of detail and foreshadowing about what's to come. I just feel that perhaps Dolores' storyline threw everyone off a bit. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Big thank you to my patrons Robert Holtz, John Levin, and Chris Cole. They're actually writers on the show and give me all the answers that make this super simple. Nah, I'm just kidding. They're actually my captors. I've been locked in this basement since the last episode, and I can't escape or use the restroom until I trend on Reddit again. By the way, that was wicked cool. So glad you guys loved the cat in the cradle theory so much. I think by the time this video comes out, we'll have passed 14,000 in record time. I'm blown away, team. Much love, and I hope to see you next time.